Welcome back to Black Hat 2024. We're broadcasting from the Four Seasons. It's day 3 of our online streaming interviews. This session we're talking to Justine Bone. Justine is Executive Director of the crypto ISAC. She's also an advisor to a company called RedJack. And I suspect as we talk, we're going to find out we have some parallel paths in our histories. Justine, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We always like to start our interviews with getting to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into what we call these days cyber.
You know, I was in a meeting earlier with some of the management here at Black Hat, and I said, you know, I've been here since I used to be able to sneak in with somebody else's badge and sit on the floor at the back of the room and learn my hands-on hacking techniques that I once practiced. Mm-hmm. So I come from a security offense background, a security research background, and it's one of the reasons why I remain so involved with Black Hat. Sure. Today I'm on the review board and I help plan the CISO Summit, and I just love this community because that's my roots. Mm-hmm. But as we do, we evolve in our careers. Sure. So I immigrated and went into corporate America in New York City. And climbed the ladder, if you will, and established teams at Bloomberg, and ended up leading information security there and at Dow Jones as Chief Information Security Officer. Sure. But I have an entrepreneurial spirit, so I've helped establish a couple of cybersecurity companies. I've helped stand up, strategy for security solutions providers. Mm-hmm. I've specialized in specific verticals. I worked in the healthcare industry for quite some time, leading a company focused on medical device security called MedSec. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward to today, I'm now going deep down the rabbit hole, as they say, in crypto. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean crypto assets that go beyond cryptocurrency use cases.
Oh, thank you.
But the majority of it is a financial sure. services use case scenario most of the time.
These days.
Yeah. Although, like I say, there's a lot going on beyond that on the blockchain. And there's obviously a lot of security challenges cut out for us in that space. Sure. Prior to that, I was the Chief Product Officer at RedJack, a company that I'm very, very passionate about tackling and developing solutions around cyber resilience, enabling cyber resilience. And I remain an advisor to RedJack, so I'm thrilled to help push that initiative forward as well.
For the benefit of our audience, who we hope are young and new and just getting into the business, could you just briefly describe what you mean by cyber resilience?
Yeah, because you see that a lot, and it is used as a buzzword a lot of the time, and it's actually not. It's actually a strategy with emerging standards promoted by organizations like NIST, MITRE, and other scientists have been thinking about what is resilience. And it comes from operational resilience, which is really about anticipating that a bad thing is going to happen, and how can we withstand that, ride through that, and recover from that. So there's a business continuity aspect, there's a relationship between business continuity planning and resiliency planning, and of course within that scope of all the operationally challenging incidents that can occur, there are cyber incidents. So I think of resilience as a sort of a meta layer on top of where we've come from with risk management, which has been very focused on things like specific vulnerabilities and the risks around that. What's the likelihood of a vulnerability happening? What's the impact of that happening? This is sort of an evolution of us thinking, you know what? Bad things are going to happen, and we can patch as many vulnerabilities as we possibly can, but something else will happen that we're not expecting. How do we anticipate that, whatever it is, and how do we ensure that our organization will remain resilient through that bad thing happening and be able to recover from that? So there's a lot of thinking about things like asset inventory, knowing what you've got, knowing what your critical dependencies are. If you're a company, understanding what your critical business functions are to continue operations through, an incident of some kind. And then technologies like, coming out of RedJack where there's a mapping between asset inventory, critical business functions, and how do we connect the dots there and make sure a company is able to ride through a cyber incident, maintaining, some level of functional capacity such that the company's operations are viable.
Not to pick on any particular security company that might have caused an incident in the last couple of weeks, but as a learning exercise, as a hypothetical, how could the tools like the RedJack provides and the strategy, the approach, help a company be resilient when the inevitable bad thing happens that's not even malicious.
Right, right, exactly.
Right. I'm sure we'll find out over time a cascade of very innocent
Yeah.
little things that led up to
Yeah.
something really
Yeah.
bad happening.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
worse,
we
but-
had a critical dependency, didn't we?
We sure did.
And a technology like what Red Jack developed would have helped us understand the reality of the existence of that dependency.
Right.
Whether a company acts on that or not becomes a sort of a business decision, but it's having that insight and understanding where the dependencies, especially as it relates to business functions, critical business functions to an organisation. Now there's this dependency. Is that an acceptable risk to have that dependency? So it sort of forces that conversation at a very high level within the company. Only senior leadership within an organisation really understand where those critical business functions fall.
But do they? Always?
It's an exercise.
Okay.
And I'm starting to see this, and you might too. When you talk to Chief Information Security Officers, especially those that are moving in the direction of Chief Security Officer, so that their mandate is extending.
Right.
It is now often including resiliency and planning a resiliency, program within a company, which makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. So I think that we are going to see the increased adoption of a resiliency first approach to risk management, but we're also at a fairly early stage.
And it's ironic to me, being around a long time. A lot of what I'm hearing you describe is the things that companies start needing to think about strategically is kind of like what we've been telling them for 30, 35 years. It's kind of blocking and tackling.
As we know, it often takes a very bad thing happening for folks to respond and realize this is something that needs to be.
Unfortunately, it seems to be the only way.
Yeah, well,
sometimes.
that combined with a few other external pressures, including the regulators, and the insurance industry too, which is now really getting involved in cyber and risk quantification and the
They're
ability
finding
to.
out they couldn't make quite as much money by throwing on that cyber rider.
Yeah, I believe their own business models went through some reevaluation in the last couple of years, and I think there's a bit more science going into writing those policies now than perhaps
It's
there
always
was a little while ago.
I don't know if evolution is the right word. Maybe if you think in terms of evolution happening over millions and billions of years, the analogy works, but baby steps.
That's right. Well, look, we've been at this for a while now, and we've come from a culture of prevention, right? The CISO being expected to perfect security and prevent anything from happening. And at the most senior levels now, in the boardroom, there's a realization that, the cyber incident is probably inevitable. How are we going to manage our way through that? And that's that sort of resiliency mindset that I think senior leaders are starting to adopt now, that we all understand the reality of the likelihood of a cyber incident occurring.
So out of curiosity, a lot of the focus of this week in this place, on this end of town, Black Hat, is the enterprise, the larger organizations. How does things like cyber resilience extend to the smaller SMBs, the smaller companies that don't necessarily have security teams and staff? They might have one guy that was out to lunch that day when they decided who's going to do security for us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. With SaaS-based solutions, we've also seen the emergence of security management as a service. The industry of fractional, C-suite and CISO work and virtual CISOs and, the models now where earlier stage companies can still bring in expertise without having to, commit to engaging full-time resources.
Break the bank.
Exactly, which is just not feasible for a startup or an early stage company. And at the same time, the SaaS-based platforms that we're also dependent upon have matured their own security, capabilities to the point that so much of what once was an exercise that needed to be tackled in-house can now be pushed out to your SaaS provider. So I think that there's a more viable path and a more viable way to build a secure company from day one now than once upon a time when it was, we've got to sort of wait till we're mature enough to tackle that.
There's certainly a lot more tools in the toolbox.
Yep.
Or silver bullets in the magazine, as it were. Let's talk about crypto for a little bit.
Cool.
Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing with the crypto ISAC.
Yeah, so ISACs are not a new thing, Information
all.
Sharing and Analysis Center. We're all familiar with the FS ISAC, and every critical infrastructure sector has an ISAC.
How many ISACs are there now?
There's about 20 something.
20? Yeah.
Yep. So some industries have more than one.
Yep.
But until recently, there's been no crypto ISAC, which folks in crypto are often surprised to learn. There's not been a crypto ISAC. I hear that a lot. But no, there hasn't. And it takes a bit of work to pull one together. It takes an industry recognizing the need and an industry ready to support the creation of an ISAC. And that's what it is. An ISAC is made up of member companies that represent industry who care about improving the state of things via information sharing. So you've got to have a culture of information sharing, a sort of maturity, if you will, within that industry that's ready to share information. And we're there now in crypto. There are, I've got founding member companies that have their own quite mature security organizations internally. They've got their own threat intel teams. They're doing all the right things. But it's a matter of now sharing between the members and between the public and private sector as well, which has always been a core part of an ISAC's mission. So that's what we're doing. We're not doing everything the same way as the other ISACs. Crypto is somewhat unique, and for really good reasons, I'm excited about that. The nature of blockchain and decentralization and transparency has sort of created this very sharing culture. Companies are used to transactions being visible to other organizations. So there's a willingness to collaborate and share that I would argue you might not see in other industries by default. And that's good news for someone like me, because the willingness to share security data and incident data, indicators of compromise, threat intelligence, is there. It's just a matter of putting together the mechanisms to enable that, which is what we're working on.
What do you think's behind the difference in terms of approach and openness?
I think it's because of the technology. I think it's because of the nature of blockchain. And like I say, there's so much that blockchain sort of makes different for the security community. When an incident happens on chain, it's visible. Everybody can see it. They can see the theft or the heist or the scam or the what have you, the exploit. They can see what the impact is. It's usually a financial impact, right down to the calculation of the dollar figures. You can even do that when you're looking at smart contract vulnerabilities. You can even predict what it would be if it happened. And there's even security monitoring technologies out there on chain now that will anticipate that exploit occurring and block it before it occurs. And then you'll see a security company saying something like, "We just prevented a $160 million attack." And they're able to measure that because of the nature of transparency on the blockchain. So I think, there's all this technical component to it, but there's also a culture that comes with that. And there's a mindset and a sort of a comfort with living operating in a transparent way. And I think that's fed into things like this interest in creating the crypto ISAC and our ability to execute and build this organization rather quickly. Because I don't have to overcome that hurdle. I don't have to convince my members that sharing is okay. They know it's okay. They built their companies under that,
So they're kind of sharing
construct.
anyway to make it all work, and you're just kind of organizing a little bit,
Yeah,
focusing a little bit on a few specific things.
Yeah, and then, sort of emulating what the other ISACs do. There's a certain amount of vetting that we have to do. We have to make sure that we KYC our members, we know who's getting involved, we look at the information and make sure it's of a certain integrity and reliability before it's shared. There's another whole community of sort of researchers that operate over social media channels, many of whom remain anonymous, and they do good work, excellent work, but you don't quite know who that is and, really what the background is to the intelligence that's getting produced. And so there's a sort of level of professionalism, if you will, that the ISACs bring to the table when it comes to sharing, certainly between these member companies who are creating the ecosystem that is enabling things like cryptocurrencies and trading and all that good stuff.
Great. So what's your, we have a few moments left, but what's making you most excited about being here this week, especially in terms of your ISAC that you're setting up?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. You know, the topics that we've talked about are relatively new in terms of solutions around resilience that enable a resilience program to be built in an organization. Crypto, also relatively new. Security research, vulnerability research within crypto, relatively new. So I'm seeing the sort of emergence of these these capabilities here at Black Hat now, in line with their adoption in the market, and that's what gets me excited. It's the chance to be here at the beginning of where we're going as an industry and be a part of that, which is not dissimilar to how we've seen cybersecurity as an industry evolve, and Black Hat, the conference itself, evolve over the last, decade or more. Seeing resilience, seeing blockchain, seeing all that come out, it's following a similar path, and I'm excited to be really involved in
Well,
that.
it's exciting to talk to somebody that's an old timer in the industry that's actually excited and enthusiastic about anything in this industry.
It's true.
I think that's a good thing.
Sometimes it stays challenging to
We appreciate you stopping by today to talk with us and share some of the enthusiasm. Hopefully you guys are excited out there. Don't forget to check out all our coverage this week at securityweekly.com/Black Hat. That's going to wrap it for us for now. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Justine.
Thank you very much.